It's a tense moment. An officer arrives on the scene alone to face a suspect who appears armed and defiant, ignoring the order to surrender.
Come on, get down! No, get down! Get down! I'm cutting my pocket. I don't care, get down! I'm cutting my pocket. Get down! Get down, you get shot! Shoot me in the head.
Still ignoring the warnings, Manassian moves in on the officer, who stays cool, realizing there's no gun, and the suspect surrenders. It's over in less than 30 seconds with no shots fired and no more casualties, as bystanders record the whole thing.
The man was not cooperating. He kept on taking steps forward, and it is at that point that the officer, I believe, realized that that was not a gun in his hand. So he put away his gun, he took out his baton, he went forward. The man saw that the cop will not shoot him, so he gave up right there and then.
Drop the knife! Drop the knife! Drop the knife!
Police takedowns don't always end so peacefully.
Drop the knife!
After a series of high-profile shootings, Toronto Police's use of force faced scrutiny and formal calls to change their tactics by de-escalating standoffs.
Stay down! Drop the knife! Drop the knife! Stop! Stay down! Stop!
New regular training stresses negotiation to avoid using lethal force when possible. This retired officer says the solo arrest of Manassian was textbook perfect.
He acted smartly, tactically, and courageously.
A standoff de-escalated and a suspect arrested to face the consequences. Vic Adopia, CBC News, Toronto.
For more on next steps for investigators, I'm joined by Phil Gursky in Ottawa, President and CEO of Borealis and a former CSIS analyst. Phil, thanks for being here. Let's start with that last part, what we just saw there. Were you surprised at police response and how quickly that was contained?
Well, I think hats off, kudos to the officer. He clearly received very good training. He followed that training to the nth degree, and he's able to neutralize a guy who had just carried out a heinous attack. And now the guy's alive. He's not dead, which means you can question him, and you can hopefully find out why he did what he did. So I think this is a tremendous kudos to Toronto Police Services, the training they give their officers, and this particular officer who did what he was trained to do.
Okay, and one of the things police are going to want to know is obviously motive here, although it appears from government sources and elsewhere that there's no national security threat. So where does the investigation go from here if that is the case?
Well, I listened to Mark Saunders. I listened to the minister talk about this. So what they're saying really, Rosemary, is that they don't, as of now, there's no information, there's no intelligence that suggests a national security link. But we're 7-8 hours after this. There's a lot that needs to be learned. So what they're going to do is basically ask him. Maybe he's cooperating, maybe he's not. So maybe he'll tell them why he did what he did. They'll look at his social media presence. They'll probably get a warrant to look at his cell phone, to look at his email. They'll probably get a warrant to search his apartment or his house. They'll talk to family, they'll talk to friends, they'll talk to workmates to see, was there anything amiss? Was this guy going down a certain pathway, and was anything noticed? So it's really it's kind of a concentric circles, if you will.
Yeah.
Start with the suspect, and go from there and see what you can find out.
Off the top, we talked about things that London has done to prevent these kinds of attacks with vehicles because they have become all too common in that city. Things like even pre-screening people when they rent vans. Is there a way to prevent an incident like this, a lone attacker in a rented vehicle?
I don't think so, Rosemary. Unless he's already on your radar, he's under surveillance, or he's under investigation for another purpose, it's really, really hard. And, you talk about, rental places should do background checks. Well, how many vehicles are rented in Toronto on a given day? I mean, how can you do that in real time? And secondly, you can put bollards up outside the ACC or outside, Parliament or Queen's Park. You can't put bollards up and down Yonge Street, the longest street in Canada. So we really got to be a little more realistic as to what can be done in this case. So sure, lock down and put a lot of security in the venues where you expect a lot of people, but we can't make the city into a fortress. And I don't think we want to go down that pathway.
So the only way then is what? Sort of watch for and monitor chatter, try and get ahead of these people, assess them out online. Even that becomes very difficult to monitor someone 24/7.
Oh, you can't. We learned that, right, in Strathroy with Aaron Driver. He was on a peace bond, but he wasn't being monitored because he had other priorities at the time. And Canadians don't realize how much time and effort this takes to monitor somebody. So, if you're watching him, great, you might get lucky, but the vast majority of people aren't being watched 24/7, and nor should they be in a democratic democratic society like Canada.
Phil Gursky, thank you for perspective tonight. I appreciate it, sir.
Thanks, Rosemary.